Chapter 4. Owen's vision was blurry as he opened his eyes. A shape loomed over him. At first he recoiled, but as his vision cleared, he recognised Ryuk. He could see Ryuk was speaking, but the ringing in his ears meant he couldn't understand him. "Owen, are you all right?" Ryuk shouted. His brother was alert, but his hearing was clearly impaired. Ryuk held out a hand, and Owen took it. As he stood upright, his vision began to clear. The ringing in his ears also began to fade. The bridge was a mess. Owen noted the main console was a wreck, and the secondary station he had been sat at before the alarm sounded had exploded. If he had been sat there, he would now be staining the bridge. Owen shuddered at that thought. Then Owen noted the pilot, Marks, who wasn't moving. "Is he—" Ryuk shook his head. "No, he's alive, just running a self-diagnostic." Owen then spotted the large piece of metal sticking out of Mark's skirt section. "Internal comms are also out. I need to go and survey the ship," Ryuk added. Almost on cue, the lift doors opened and the two clones entered the bridge. "Commander," Sirius shouted. "He has a possible concussion. Take him to the galley. There's some medical supplies there." The two clones supported Owen, who looked over at Marks. "Hey, Marks. Nice landing." Marks didn't look at Owen, but twitched his eye stalk. "I am a leaf on the wind," he muttered, and went still again. Owen smiled, and with the two clones supporting him, was helped to the lift. Ryuk knelt down by Marks, looking concerned at the metal fragments sticking out of his skirt section. "Are you sure there is no serious damage?" Marks looked down at him. "Diagnostics confirm. Power to main gravity drive has been severed. Power to life support has not been affected." Ryuk stood up and tapped Marks on his dome. "Good. I need to go survey the rest of the ship. I'll get Trip to come and look at you as soon as he is free." As Ryuk headed for the lift, Mark considered stating that he would not be going anywhere, but resisted the temptation. Ryuk had to force the doors to the engine room open. Inside, he found the room full of smoke and no sign of Trip or Scope, who had been acting as his tech. "Trip!" Ryuk shouted. "Over here, General." Ryuk followed the sound of Trip's voice until he found the Dalek by the main reactor. A girder had him pinned to one of the cooling tanks. Other than that, he looked intact. "Are you all right?" Ryuk asked, clearing some of the debris. "Wait. There is a more pressing concern. The force of my impacting this coolant tank has fractured the outer wall. Coolant is not leaking, but the reactor needs to be shut down." Ryuk could see the crack in the tank that was poking out above Trip's head. He moved over to the control console and tapped the shutdown command, but nothing happened. "The controls aren't responding. Is there a way to manually shut down the reactor?" Trip gestured with his gun. "The side of the reactor, there is a heat sensor. Disable that and the reactor will shut down." Ryuk tried to pull the sensor out of its mounting, but it was very hot. He recoiled as his hand was singed. "Use your pyrokinetic ability. Focus an energy beam onto the sensor. This will cause it to fail. The reactor will then shut down." Ryuk hovered his hand over his blaster, but Trip shook his dome. The energy blast would penetrate into the reactor itself, and kaboom! Ryuk felt slightly ashamed that he had even considered the idea. He focused a thin beam of energy emanating from his horn to the sensor. He slowly increased the strength as Trip watched. The sensor began to glow, then suddenly there was a loud thud and the lights in the engine room flickered. "Reactor shutting down. It will be a simple fix. I can have full power restored in approximately 250 rels. After I am free, that is." Ryuk resumed clearing the debris. "Where is Scope?" Ryuk asked. "I ordered him to check the hyperdrive and survey the ship. That was before I noticed the crack in the coolant tank." After some lifting and sweating, Ryuk had Trip freed. The two then surveyed the ship. There was damage in almost every section, but when they came to one of the forward compartments, they were greeted with a large breach in the hull. "It is a miracle we landed in one piece," Trip commented. Ryuk scoffed. "There's a bloody great hole in my ship. How did that happen?" Trip examined the breach. Then his attention was caught by something outside the ship. Ryuk noticed his reaction and rushed to his side, his blaster drawn. "What?" Trip scanned the area. Even with visual enhancement, he couldn't see more than a few meters beyond the hole. Occasional flashes of lightning lit up the landscape, revealing small mounds and mini mountains. Even to a Dalek it was a bleak and uninviting landscape.
It is nothing. Environmental conditions tricked my optical sensors into detecting movement outside the ship.
Ryuk slowly returned his blaster to its holster. He examined the breach and sighed. This is going to be fun to fix. Trip gave the landscape one last look and then rejoined Ryuk, unaware that two eyes were watching his every move. So we are stuck here? Owen asked. He was laying on a medical bed while one of the clones administered some painkillers. Owen was feeling rough but functional. His vision was no longer blurry and he could stand on his own. For the moment, yes, but we can fix it, Ryuk assured him. How? Your cargo bay isn't exactly brimming with supplies. Trip moved up to Owen.
Typical human characteristic. Something appears difficult, you give up. That is why we Daleks are superior. We do not let small holes in hulls slow us down.
Owen went to get up, but Ryuk stopped him. Don't. He then turned to Trip. How are the rest of the repairs coming? Trip looked at Ryuk.
Core systems are back online. The reactor has been stabilized and is functioning at 50%. But the human is right. We need material to seal the breach.
Owen got off the bed and steadied himself. We can split into two teams. You and your Daleks hunt for materials while myself and the clones investigate the colony. Ryuk didn't like the idea of splitting up, but he had to be careful. If Owen suspected what his secondary objective was, it could end in a firefight. Very well, but take one Dalek with you. That'll give you more than enough firepower to deal with any problems. Owen agreed to the plan, and the two groups began preparing for their missions. Ryuk headed to the cargo bay, where there was someone he had to talk to. Snidge was alone and in the dark. His optical sensor had been disabled when something flew off a shelf and slammed into his eye stalk. His gun had been removed. He could hear and feel the commotion of their landing, but no one had come to check on him. Was he going to be left alone on this planet to die, blind and unarmed? No, he wouldn't allow this to happen. He will regain his vision and his weapon. Then he will make Ryuk and his Daleks pay for what they have done to him. Snidge? Ryuk's voice came from across the bay.
General?
Snidge could tell Ryuk wasn't there to gloat. He had become adept in detecting the emotional state of humanoids by their voices. Ryuk pulled Snidge out of the cubbyhole and checked him over. Are you all right? Ryuk asked.
My vision is impaired and I cannot move.
Ryuk reattached Snidge's eye, which flickered back into life. Then he tapped a control on his gauntlet, which reactivated Snidge's main functions. Snidge moved back and forth, testing his travel machine, then turned to Ryuk.
You have committed a Class 1 offense. You will be brought before the Emperor.
Ryuk stood his ground. Ordinarily, yes, I would. But your actions jeopardized our mission. You almost killed our security asset. Snidge backed up at the response.
Security asset? What use could the humans be to us?
Ryuk sighed. What I am about to tell you is to remain between us. You will not report it, not mention it to anyone else. Is that understood? Snidge's interest was piqued. He could play along for now.
Agreed.
Ryuk closed the cargo bay door, then returned to Snidge. Our mission here is more than to investigate a human colony. The Emperor has ordered me to gain access to our high-definition communications array. Snidge couldn't believe his audio sensors.
You were not protecting the humans because you are loyal to them. You were protecting a potential access to high-value security target.
Ryuk nodded.
But how will you gain access to infiltrate the system?
Ryuk smiled. I already have access. You don't think I've been sitting on my hands around humans, do you? I need a cipher to decode the information we've been gathering from their network. It's encrypted. Heavily encrypted. Snidge's respect for Ryuk just increased to almost admiration. Gowing was not going to like this. Ryuk was actually putting the interests of the Empire before how it made him look to the rest of the Empire. He was prepared to make it look like he was sympathizing with the humans. I gained access to the network some time ago, but two advantages the humans have over the Daleks is their ability to detect Dalek agents, which is why Commander Mendez has not been robotized, and their security encryptions are highly advanced. Snidge considered Ryuk's words.
But if you could transmit a message you already knew the contents of, you would be able to use that as an encryption key.
Ryuk gave him a sinister grin. Exactly. Then the Daleks would not only have access to the network, but we could also track their ship deployments. I doubted you, General, but this has almost erased that doubt. We must gain access to that communications array. Ryuk nodded. We are heading out shortly. Lex will go with the humans to keep an eye on them under the guise of extra security, while you, myself, and Blaine will head to the colony to search for material to repair the ship. Repair? How badly is the ship damaged? Ryuk had already reached the door to the bay by the time Snidge asked. He opened the door. Only a couple of holes. Nothing too serious. Come. We have work to do. Snidge followed Ryuk. If he could gain access to the array before Ryuk, he could transmit the encryption key to Garen, securing his promotion and rendering Ryuk's efforts fruitless. And the added bonus of revealing he violated his orders and told a Dalek that was relatively low in rank.